Geez, Clare had a thumping win over Wexford. Later on, I'll play Michael Burney's match report on it. But 6-25 to Clare. Wexford 1-18. And this is in Wexford Park. I mean, that's a mother and father of beatings there. Aidan McCarthy's his run so far this year, brilliant. He added another 110. David Reedy 2-1. Tony Kelly's back in harness, 1-2 for him. Peter Duggan 1-1. And Mark Rogers, he also scored a goal. So it makes you wonder, did they not target the Limerick game? Was the Limerick game a blip? Or do you just have to say Wexford were down a huge amount of players like Lee Chin, Rory O'Connor, Matt O'Hanlon, Kevin Foley, Mark Fanning, and just say it was just one of those days where we found out that their panel isn't that deep?
This was probably the scoreline that I definitely did a double take and maybe a triple take at yesterday. I mean, I couldn't quite believe it. I suppose I've been at the game in the Gaelic grounds, and I know you were probably watching on TV. I mean, like, Clare were awful for about 50 minutes of that game. It was a really kind of a strange, like, reflected the final whistle of that game, that there were 6 points between the teams. Now, the credit for the reason why there was so little, which kind of points to yesterday's game as well, was Aidan McCarthy was pretty good all through, and David Reedy had a huge impression off the bench. He came off the bench and got 1-2. And McCarthy's free taking was really, really good. And that's going to be pretty interesting, I think, going forward, what way that's going to work as regards to free taking. Is he going to kind of stay in them, I think it was a workplace accident that he hurt his leg really badly in last year, and that kind of affected him. But he definitely is, like, really, really talented, and, like, he was getting scores from play. And then Reedy was really, really kind of busy and really, really effective. Like, they couldn't get Duggan into the game that night, apart from maybe setting up an early first half goal. And obviously Kelly wasn't togged out. But then yesterday, it just all seems to kind of click. Look, the Wexford absentees are one thing, but I mean, I think just the win by the scale of that win down there, and like, we kind of go on about kind of trends and patterns between counties. I mean, like, that's one that kind of stands out now. Pretty sure, isn't it, the last 3 championships Clare have beaten Wexford and knocked them out, so that just sows little seeds it out, like, I mean, as much as the hurling is very, very difficult to kind of read into it, I find it easier at the moment to be making more sounder judgments about the football. Now, in a couple of weeks, I think when the football becomes hard up, and maybe we can get into this, like the scheduling, I think we're really going to see the issue with it, that the fact the league and championship are squashed together, and that, look, I think the solution was, like, pin the preseason competitions and just start the league a bit earlier, and then just create that little bit of a gap between it to move, like, but it's just hard to know really what teams are doing, like, Simon Morris said a line a few weeks ago with the football probably applies to hurling. There are games, he said, where teams are going to pull the handbrake up, and I think at hurling especially, I think everyone's just fearful of what happened to Waterford last year, the fact that they won the league, and even by extension Cork, okay, they got out of Munster, but I mean, they got the league final and then had a terrible start to the championship, losing their first 2 games, and then people saw what happened to Waterford. I don't know, is there almost like an underlying fear factor amongst counties? I don't want to get to the league final or league semi-final,
But would you say that it was like a hangover for Waterford after winning the league, or was it more so they went out against Limerick, actually played pretty well, but couldn't beat Limerick despite Limerick being down some big players and Keane Lynch going off injured, and then you keep hearing about this overtraining after that game? Maybe that was more so the problem, the psychological blow of losing to a weakened Limerick and then overtraining, and maybe the league had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, no, I personally think it's kind of multifaceted what happened to them last year, but I just think the general, I'm just wondering, is the general theory and general mood around it, and is this, it mightn't be said directly in dressing rooms, but is this kind of a thing, unspoken thing there about, the fear of going too hard at the league, because it's kind of an intangible that you can't measure. I mean, I agree with you. Like, I mean, that was a brilliant performance that night in the Gaelic grounds against Limerick, but they kind of gave everything, and there probably might have been a kind of a bit of a psychological kind of, as you said, hangover kind of scars from that. They got a couple of injuries that night as well, didn't they? I think Gerald Daly anyway was one.
Yeah.
Maybe someone else kind of picked one up. I can't think right now. So yeah, look, I think there was kind of elements of that, like, but I wonder, is that affecting teams? And that's the beauty of it. Like, there was no perfect way to kind of time this or taper this, and if there was, sure, every county would have been doing it for years, and that's the kind of, I suppose, the great dilemma kind of facing every county, and it's kind of, it just magnified that bit more with the way the schedule is this year, that everyone's eyes are on the 23rd of April in the hurling sense. Maybe the one county that probably have a bit of difference is simply Cork, because they're not out that day and they're not out till the 30th. They probably are the one you would think that maybe could go hard for it, probably could maybe do with the trophy. Clare probably would strike me as maybe one that could as well. Maybe Lohan might view it like that, but this is year 4, I think it is, isn't it? So maybe kind of a bit of silverware will be something to show in that sense. But I'm sure Clare Sports will throw back to you then, 2016 they won the league, this epic one after a final replay, and then the championship didn't really kind of amount to much after.
Yeah, Darragh Egan was saying afterwards that he's in the dark about whether Paddy Foley will be available for the provincial campaign. So he basically isn't sure on that one. And in terms of some of the players that he tried out, he said some lads put their hands up, have played consistently over the last few weeks. Other lads came in today and didn't perform. Unfortunately, the nature of the game is that they mightn't see action for the rest of the year. So he's fairly called it straight out there. Yellow Belly TV, Bill Redmond says, seen Michael Verney in Wexford Park. Needs a haircut. Unfortunately, the only interesting thing that I seen there yesterday, Wexford lost 3-9 on their own puckouts in the first half. Martin Furlong adds, Mark Fanning injured, Connor Devitt injured, Liam Ryan, Niall Murphy, Paddy Foley away, Matt O'Hanlon injured, Joe O'Connor, Dee O'Keefe, Richie Lawler. So he's talking about a huge amount of absences here. So, I mean, that's a list of Wexford players, he says, that did not play the Clare game. I don't think any other county has the amount of injuries we have at the moment. What is worrying is the lack of talent coming through. But every county is carrying injuries at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's issues kind of all over the place. And I suppose just, the season-ending injury before used to always have the phrase season-ending broken leg. If you read in the media, it'd be season-ending cruciate, all that. A lot of injuries can be described as season-ending now, the way it's working out,
Yeah.
And they might be more innocuous. I remember when the Mark Coleman thing broke, for example, Cork was he was out for the year, kind of checking out, it wasn't the cruciate or, smashed kneecap or whatever. It was just kind of a knee issue. But once you have to get a little bit of an operation now, or you have to get some kind of rehab done for it, and then it's you might be back, but do you have time, and do managers have the wherewithal to kind of scope kind of facilitate a return? I mean, that injury bulletin that came out from Tipperary a couple of weeks ago was just a stream of bad news. Obviously, they described Cadell's injury as season-ending with the cruciate, but it sounds pretty difficult for Carl Bard and Niall O'Mara now with the blocking time that they're going to miss with their injuries. So in that sense, I'd say a lot of teams are looking for kind of people to step up, and that's probably the issue with Wexford, that you just see that depth issue. I suppose they had such an unbelievable crop a couple of years ago when they had those guys that came through from those few under-21 teams that won Leinster's a few years in a row.
Yeah.
Just is that kind of same kind of talent. Now, in fairness, there's guys I think Charlie McGuckin over the last couple of years has been pretty good, and obviously Darragh Egan has kind of tried out other guys to kind of give them a run as well. Oisin Pepper has been getting a good run in times and has looked promising. But you just see, I think, under the new system, I don't know, what do you need, kind of 25, 26 guys now? Whereas before maybe you could be looking at kind of a 20, 21, but in that kind of short space of time when there's the 4 games, and it's just, it's going to be such savage competitiveness to try and get out of whatever province you're in.
Yeah, you can't but lose players with how physical the game is. Sean O'Sullivan says, you wouldn't want to be sitting behind Verney at a match. You'd see feck all. Hugh Paddy says, huge comments from Egan, and adds that might not play for the rest of the year. Fairly demoralising for some lads. Yeah, that's the sort of comment that, could go either way. Brian Lohan said after the game, I suppose the Limerick game was so bad on a lot of fronts that there was no point in dwelling on it too much. It was a case of resetting and moving on.